Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the George Washington University School of Business's third annual GW Business and Policy Forum. This year's theme, The Future of Work is Now. I want to thank Dean Sevin Yeltekin and the entire GW School of Business team, our sponsors, and today's speakers for making this event possible. It is such a pleasure to welcome so many leaders from business, government, academia, and our broader community gathered for a very, very important conversation. Each year, the forum brings together thought leaders, policymakers, and change makers to explore how innovation, policy, and leadership interact, and how those interactions can best shape our economy and our society. This year's theme, The Future of Work is Now, could not be more timely. From the rise of artificial intelligence to shifting global industries and workforce expectations, the nature of work sometimes feels to me like it is transforming in front of our very eyes. And if you add to that the uncertainty of the federal shutdown, the furloughs, the layoffs, it's clear we are navigating real change in real time. Here at GW, we believe the most pressing challenges of our time demand collaboration across disciplines, sectors, and borders. Our location in the heart of Washington, D.C., places us at the crossroads of business and policy where research meets real-world decision-making. In fact, just last week, the World Bank held its annual meeting just steps away from campus. So we're not just in the heart of DC, we are exactly where the action is in the world of business, policy, and global finance. And the GW School of Business is a leader in this dynamic space. Our faculty are policymakers on workforce development and innovation. They partner with industry on sustainability and digital transformation, and they explore how organizations can thrive when people and technology work together. And our students are entering the workforce ready to lead, equipped not only with technical expertise, but with the ethical and the strategic judgment needed to ensure that technology serves humanity rather than the other way around. But the future of work is not just about technology. It's about trust. It's about relationships. At its very heart, it really is and always has been about people. The evolution of work brings tremendous promise. New industries, more flexible models, more powerful tools to enhance creativity and productivity. But we all know it also brings real challenges. How do we reskill the workforce? How do we ensure equity in opportunity? And how do we maintain human connections in an increasingly automated world? Our shared responsibility is to navigate these changes thoughtfully so that progress lifts us all. So to help us think through some of the opportunities ahead, we're going to open this year's forum with a fireside chat between Dean Sevin Yeltekin and our keynote speaker, Jim Clifton, chairman of Gallup. Jim Clifton is a remarkable leader whose career has transformed how we understand human potential and organizational performance. As the CEO of Gallup for more than 3 decades, he guided its evolution from a US-based polling firm to a global analytics and advisory powerhouse representing 96% of the world's population through its research. In fact, he launched the Gallup World Poll, which gives voice to billions around the world. And I will add that when I was in the classroom teaching sociology, Gallup reporting was an incredibly important tool in my own classroom. It allowed me to show my students how polling worked. It gave them up-to-the-minute data from across the country. It was a powerful tool for introducing contentious and difficult topics in a way that allowed students to consider their own attitudes in comparison to others and to grasp the great plurality of opinions and views that tend to characterize the most important issues of the day. And as a bonus, Gallup gave us free access. So like many other professors, my department could never have afforded to pay for this kind of data. So I did want to take this opportunity to thank Jim for any role he may have played in making that access possible. Today, Jim will share insights from decades spent studying how leaders can help people and workplaces flourish. And guiding that conversation will be GW School of Business Dean Sevin Yeltekin, whose vision and leadership define GW's approach to business education. Dean Yeltekin is new to GW. She joined us in August, but her leadership acumen, her infectious positive energy, and her keen intellect are already making themselves felt, and I'm so delighted she has decided to join us. So as we begin this year's forum, I invite you to listen, to question, and to imagine, because the future of work is not something we're waiting for. It's something we're building together right here and right now. So to get us started, please join me in welcoming Dean Sevin Yeltekin and Gallup Chairman Jim Clifton.
Good, that was good.
Okay, we get to start our fireside chat. And once again, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for participating in our discussion today. The main theme of this forum being the future of work is now. There's going to be a lot of discussions, obviously, of emerging technologies, especially AI. But I want to follow up on something that President Granberg mentioned, that the future of work is not just about technologies, but it's about human relationships, about trust. You, in your career at Gallup, of course, you've done a tremendous amount of work looking at organizations, trying to understand how organizations function. And I want to hone in on that sort of human element. And one of the studies that you've had is that there is 1 in 5 employees feel disengaged. That's one of the reports that you had. And we would love to hear from you, before we go any further, how you actually measure engagement. What are you exactly measuring when we talk about engagement? And what does it mean in practice for an organization? And as a follow-up, what are the hidden costs of basically employers or firms not really paying attention to that disengagement?
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having an interest in Gallup. We've done so many, Sevin, we've done so many employee interviews around the world for 25 years. It's like 30 million. Mm-hmm. And they're all for clients. And so because they're for clients, they're connected to customers and outcomes. Do you see what I mean? So our analysts, for you researchers in here, we have a data lake that has 30 million people, employees in it, but they were able to lift up 500,000 teams that are connected to, you see what I mean? And so then we ask them to rank order them, top teams. You actually did them by tranches. Mm-hmm. So these are the very top teams, then these are the really lousy teams down here. And I asked our lead analyst, I said, tell me about the teams at the top. And he said, think of Navy SEALs. Maybe there might be a couple in here. Navy SEALs are taught to approach a problem that looks impossible to all of us. We'd look at it and go, that can't be done, and somehow they do it. But in business, for you that are in business now or going into business, you'll be given assignments where you'll look and you'll chuckle and you go, this can't be done. And somehow you go and do it. Those are the top teams. And all the way down the tranche that are the very bottom teams, those you can give them very simple assignments and it can't be done. Mm-hmm. And they also have a lot of problems. So you say, that's the 20%. They'll have accidents, they'll hurt each other, there'll be lawsuits, they need more health care. Everything that you don't want in the workplace happens in that 20%. Up at the top in the United States of America, we have 30% in that Navy SEAL team. And they're people that come in and they have enormous ambition and they play the game as hard as they can. They typically have a knack for customers. They think automatically about growth, and they're real game changers. I'll just make one point. I don't want to talk too long on your question. But we've been getting an enormous amount of interest right now. The United States is doing pretty well economically the last 10 years. So the world's GDP is 100 trillion. This is kind of the interesting business case. 100 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
The United States of America is 30 trillion of it. So it's actually a little more than 100, but it's 28% market share, and we're only 4% of the population. So, I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary performance any way you look at it. I don't know what word to use, but it's a pretty extraordinary performance by Americans. If you said, and now you take China, remember they were supposed to, every single economist in the world said China would have overwhelmed us by now, even doubled. I went through chat and did quotes. It's incredible. Nobel Prize winner said China would be at 129 trillion in 2030. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. So China's at 19. All of Europe is at 19 trillion. So if you said, what's the score right now as far as engaged employees and all, or of GDP, it's 30, 19, 19. The only thing explains it is that the United States has engaged employees of 30%, and let's just do Europe. Europe has like 10%. England's in single digits. So you have people showing up that just don't want to work. So if you asked Sevin, what are the consequences? Mm-hmm. The consequences is a catastrophe for the European economy, and I don't know how they work their way out of it. But if you said, what's the root cause of that? I would say ambition in the workplace, or I would say lousy leadership in the workplace. It's one of those two, or in combination.
Well, let's talk about that. Those are incredible statistics. When you think about that, it's really, maybe the 30% at the top, and then the middle 50%, I suppose, is what has delivered those amazing productivity gains for the United States, and the amazing innovation as well. So again, going back to your very deep career on looking at organizations, understanding what makes a team or a unit really tick. We always talk about a lot of the managerial effect. A lot of people look onto their first, their direct manager for effective leadership. Can you give us some insights into what makes an effective in those teams that are functioning really well? How are they able to harness that ambition, that desire to work? What are some of the things patterns that you have seen?
Yeah, one of the things you wonder about is that 30%, were they born that way?
Correct.
Or were they made that way? And I think they were born and then made. I think you got to be careful. If you're a really talented young person that comes in full of ambition and all that, and I'm a lousy manager, I can grind it out of you in less than a year. And then we'll say that Sevin doesn't have any ambition. No. Jim drove it out, ground it out of you. We find there's a fundamental starting point that great managers have that the lousy ones don't. Being a great manager naturally and instinctively is pretty rare. You can teach it. I'm not naturally a very good manager. I don't enjoy it. But as CEO for so long, you've got to pull it off. But when they taught me how to do it, I don't ask any questions. I just do exactly what they tell me to do. But the trick is, give a person a job that they have a natural, innate talent to perform. Make sure you have their strength. How many of you have taken something called Clifton Strengths? Okay.
Quite a few.
Wow. Almost. By the way, that's a different Clifton. I'm the best cheerleader of that particular thing. But if you get that right, so I actually am, believe it or not, a pretty poor learner. Input, but I know you are. But let's say that you're also shy and would rather stay at home and read a book. I can't wait to get to the next reception, or if somebody says, hey, we got a big idea, I say, let me call that person, let's go see him right now. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. And if somebody said to me, you got to read this real hard book before we can win the project in Berlin or something, I just can't do it, and it's a bust. It kind of depresses me and all that. And it's easy for you to do. Somebody says, hey, we got to run over to the World Bank. There's a prime minister there. So we got to get through the line and meet him or whatever. You dread it, and I can't wait to get there and do that and see if I can get her done. What if you get us backwards? You see what I mean?
Yes.
So then we say, you've got to go keep seeing people that you don't know, and I got to sit home and read. You grind the life out of us. But the good managers, I don't even watch much sports, but sports, it must be the intensity of that. There are a lot of lessons in it. But I look out and you watch how serious the NFL is. But I think most management professors, everybody okay here? I think that they would teach people that, well, even that 300-pound fat guy that's really good at blocking, he might be Hall of Fame. We're going to move him out to wide receiver and have him run long post patterns. And he goes, well, and the guy says, well, I can't, I'm not very fat. Well, we'll work it. We're going to figure out how we can do it. And the little skinny 165-year-old wide receiver, we say, you're going to start blocking those linebackers. Do you see what I mean? But getting the right people in the right position is everything. There's only three. The second one is, if you, Sevin, believe that somebody encourages your development, it's real important that you, because we're trying to maximize your gift. We're going to get you in the right job, but then we're going to let you know, and I'm going to push you too, to encourage your development. That's second. If you say nobody encourages my development and you're a star, we'll lose you. You'll leave and you'll go somewhere else. And if you don't do that real well, then I end up running a company with people that are kind of miserable. So it's real important to get that right, that we push you and we ask you what you want to become, have markers and all that. The third one is, if we ask you, at work, does your opinion count? If it's a 5, it's a lot better than a 4. We just hired a lady, we were talking about her out here, a very young lady from GW. We're going to start her at quarterback, and she's only been at Gallup 4 or 5 months. We've never done that in our entire lives. Usually you need to be there too long to run a hard project. But she just kind of on her own invented some stuff with her own opinion. Her own opinion was, well, the way we're doing it's not quite right. You see what I mean?
Yes.
But it's okay to have your own opinion. Now, we might end up saying we don't want that, nobody will buy it or whatever. But you're okay because your opinion counts. But those 3 things, they got to be in the right spot that uses their talent. You got to feel like somebody's encouraging your growth, and your opinion counts. That's kind of, there's other stuff too, but those are the big ones.
That's really, really interesting to hear, because distilling that to those 3 very, very fundamental sort of, best practices. Now, we have quite a few students sitting here, and they're graduating anytime from this May to maybe their first-year students who are graduating in a few years. And this landscape is changing very rapidly with technological as well as policy changes. You talked about the really good performing teams, having ambitious people. It's both a selection and, of course, a development. You've had a very illustrious career, and yourself, but also you managing teams and managing a very large organizations, but you've also studied and had insight into many organizations. What advice would you give them if you were in their shoes, in that audience right now? What would you be spending your time on to get ready for this uncertain and fast developing landscape?
Well, not to sound redundant, but the very first thing is be very honest with yourself about what your strengths are. That's the single most important thing. The guy that invented this was a really popular professor at the university. He died 25 years ago. Really popular professor at the University of Nebraska, but he had a great line, and this is what drove him to keep studying it, receive all kinds of awards after death and everything. But he said, when you have your strengths together, you're different. He didn't say when you have your strengths together, you're a little better than you were. You see what I mean? But it's a whole different person that walks through the door and presents themselves. But it's a whole different person that walks into the world to present themselves. And you just can't be clear enough about that. The second thing is that you got to believe that it doesn't matter what your strengths are. You can pull it off as long as you use those. You and I both have pulled off some pretty good stuff. We do it differently. But you see, what most people will do to you in your careers is they'll try to teach you and me to both pull it off like Colin Powell did. Or, you know what I mean? And you and I we're different than Colin Powell. Mm-hmm. And you and I are different from each other. But to sit down and do it, and do your self-analysis and figure out, it's amazing to me what strengths combinations that I've met throughout the world now can pull things off. You don't have to have this strength to build something very big. I think that's number one. The second thing is, I was an interviewer before there was even polling. I'm so old. There was hardly much around. And I would stand on rest areas in Nebraska. The governor wanted to know why people would drive through Nebraska and not stop. I walked over and I didn't think anybody would answer the questions. You know, it's how much money are you traveling with, and where are you going to sleep tonight? And I was going, this isn't going to work. And I couldn't get them to stop. They just would talk and talk and talk. But I started thinking, this is really fun. I figured out what would make them stop and spend more money. I could do that on my own from all the interviews I had done. I thought this amazing process could be a business. But every once in a while, you'll find something that really feels good, a job that feels good when you do it, and you're proud to do it. My fraternity brothers used to say to me, Clifton, you can't have a market. There's no job of surveying people. Well, it turns out there was. Yeah. But if you find something that really feels good when you do it, and you feel like it has rich mission and purpose, and you feel like you're making a contribution to the world or to something, or to the neighborhood, or could be to anything, I think those are really important. I'm going to add one that I've been telling the kids at Gallup. It's amazing to me how your career turns on presentations. Hmm. So there'll be somebody, and I was on a program this morning, a guy kind of out of nowhere at Gallup made and it was really good. I guarantee his career will change today. And what I tell people, now remember, you're only coming in to present to Gallup's operating committee or I don't know, something like that. But I tell them, hit that ball as far as you can out of the park, even though it's just this group and you're just presenting on blah, blah, blah. But when you leave, have them go, God, that was, Aaron really did a good job today. And you don't need to be, this guy today wasn't an entertainer type. Mm-hmm. He was just very competent. He pulled it off with comfortableness. And I'm going to go over it with him because I told him, I'm going to tell him, don't ever lose that. But my recommendation on that would be, take those with they are deadly serious moments in your career, and the little ones matter as much as the big ones. Don't blow the big. If you blow a big one, just walk out and leave the company. But the trick is, pull it off your own way. There'll be some people. I had a friend, and it doesn't matter who he was, but a Nobel Prize winner or not. But he knew I thought he gave a pretty lousy presentation one time, and he said, "What would you recommend?" I said, "The highlight was he's famous. He died last year, but I said it's when you have a slide. You know, it's kind of a funny slide. He could pull it off because everybody knew he was smarter than we were, but." But so he had his own way of doing it. He became real popular with his own style. But I would say that those kind of big ones, but that's one. Another one is that treat everybody, especially the young people, treat everybody you meet like you're going to meet them again. It's amazing how often you do. Treat everybody like $1 million, even some young person that shouldn't be in the meeting and all that. Watch out, because that might be CEO not too long in your future that you're going to be asking to choose you for the business or some kind of thing like that. Boy, it never pays to have enemies.
That's very definitely sage advice. And the skills that you were talking about, which I'd like to refer to them as in our business education lingo as behavioral skills, right? It's how you network, how you engage with others, how you actually communicate with them. And of course, the incredibly important communication skills. If you're going to have one shot, two shots, being able to actually get your point across, being able to do a very impactful presentation, you better get ready for it, and you better make sure. Which brings us a little bit to that human element versus the technology. That's going to be the big theme of today, and then we'll go to some of the questions that are coming in. But one thing, actually, going back to your surveys, is that when we looked at the AI report, there was a striking split that came across from the report from one of your surveys. A majority of Americans fear AI will eliminate more jobs than it will create, yet they believe that it will boost US competitiveness. So there's this sort of paradox of collective optimism, but then individual anxiety over what people's fortunes are going to be, right? So what role do you see business leaders playing, your clients? How do we bridge that gap between that fear and optimism? It can make us more productive, but what does it mean for my future? You talked about a few, different sort of find your strength and make sure that you do all of these, you get yourself ready for that landscape, but especially in the context of technology being a substitute. Do you see any new developments there? You see the organizations changing and addressing that gap?
I think America has an opportunity to go. We outperform the rest of the world. I think a lot of it's because of great universities, by the way. Maybe the game ball goes to that. The innovation and company. Look at Dr. Gallup was a professor at the University of Nebraska, or Iowa. Dr. Clifton was at the University of Nebraska. But there's going to be a lot of change coming to all that. But as individuals, I think that when we look at our careers, and again, I'm not retired, I'm chairman, but I still do all kinds of stuff. But a passenger's boarding your career train that's an expert on virtually everything. Mm-hmm. Better than any professor you had. I took my wife has a little heart thing. I took her to Cleveland Clinic. Supposedly that's the best in the world. I didn't learn anything, and I liked the place. I've known the CEO there and all kinds of stuff, but I didn't learn. I learned more on chat than we learned more on chat than we. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But you got to make that your friend. Boy, that's not what you can't be competing against it. That's a battle that none of us will win. But I become one of the greatest consultants. I used to be okay, but I have a friend that just got the job of as president of the University of California system, 10 big universities and all that. And he came from the University of Texas, but I couldn't believe he and I chatted in exactly what the problem was, and there's no consultant that we did it together. But it's like for a boy my age, it's like science fiction. I can't get it to go win. But somehow you got to make that your friend. I think the advantage America has is that all the AI will be in this country. That's what I believe, and that's not over Americanism or anything like that. There's 40 companies where all the business is going to be divided from. 30 of them, and the big ones, are all American. China's got a couple. There's one in Australia and all that, and they're all right in San Francisco, and these are exploding. I think we've got to figure out how to build bigger businesses with AI, generative AI, and all that stuff, where we have a explosion of startups, or I think we won't have enough jobs. And I think we can. It's really hard to see right now, but there's going to be a transformation, sort of like going from agriculture into industrial, but we got to lead that, and I think it's a great time for America. I want to say one thing more though, Sevin. I think people that can establish relationships are going to have an advantage. The importance of relationships, trust, and that kind. The value of those, while AI is going to take our value up 10 times, take relationships very seriously, Because if you're very good at establishing relationships and I'm not, and we've got the same AI passenger, expert passenger, you will crush me. The thing that happens with relationship and trust is it causes you to be able to move faster. You might wonder, why did that over evolution, why did those become important? Let's say people at Gallup, hopefully you, Josh, have, but I think if I called Josh and said to him, I need you in New York tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I don't know, can you get on a train and get there? I think you better, by the way. But I think that
Now you have no choice.
but I think he would just get, but he's not going to go, I wonder if Jim, you know what I mean?
Yes.
He's going to know that I know what he does and blah, 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 blah. And but there's trust there. But you know what happens is, see, if he doesn't, then he's got to go talk to Sevin and go, what do you think Jim wants? Maybe I can't do it, or you see what I mean? But so it causes everything to move faster, relationship and trust does. And I think people are going to have a great advantage with that. I had a guy call me, he's a really good guy, the CEO of the Detroit Chamber of Commerce. He was just named Michiganer of the Year. But anyway, this is just after COVID, when I said I'm not going to use Zoom, and then in the next 48 hours we all became experts at Zoom. But he calls me and he goes, he says to me, Clifton, he goes, you're really screwed, and with this Zoom thing. And I said, his name is Sandy. I said, what do you see, Sandy? And he says, humor doesn't come through these effing things. You guys done that? You address a group and some of the standard stuff, it's crickets, nobody laughs. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come through at all. But
yes.
Then and he's real funny. When we see each other, we're like junior high kids. We know somebody's going to say something you're not supposed to, or irreverent or something like that. So we start laughing, then we can't stop, I don't know, whatever. But then we said, oh my God, if humor's not coming through, what else isn't coming through? Caring, trust, all those kind of things. But I think leaders who take those kind of emotional attributes very, very seriously will rise above just the hardcore functional AI experts. I'm not either or, get them both, but don't ever discount what's going to happen to trust and relationship.
So we have a few minutes left, and we have a series of questions that have come through here that have been submitted. I'm going to just modify them slightly so we can hit the questions. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, if we could just have a 1-minute answer to each of them to make our time. So one big thing that we've talked about all through COVID, and it's still a big part of discussion, which is workers wanting more flexibility. I would love to hear your opinions about that. With flexibility also comes these issues that, how do you establish trust? How do you what doesn't come through when people are working from home? So we've yo-yoed, going from very flexible environments because of COVID and now back to sort of less flexible environments. What do you see in your work, how the organizations are adopting, and what's happening to workers who are demanding more flexibility?
I would say to workers, don't work from home. If you are going to work from home, do it 2 days. I mean, if you're really serious, now it depends on what you want to become. But if you want to become a top exec, or I don't know what consultant, or run a big hospital or whatever, you can't learn it from inside a cave. But what I worry about, and so AI is all over Gallup and all that, and I see these young kids coming by, and they'll put their head in. My door's always open. I don't have nearly as much to do as I used to. And they'll say, can I ask you this? Have you ever had this before? And I say, yeah, sit down. Mm-hmm. But they get some pretty, above average mentoring. I've been doing the same job for 50 years. So if I sit and watch game film with you, I can spot, I've seen a lot of stuff before. But what about the people that don't come in and they don't have that? When you bring stars in, I know them all because they're in there working around trying to figure things out. But I don't mean to be too just numerical, but you need 3 days a week if you really want to grow and develop in the office. I don't think you have to be all 5. I think all 5 is good, depending upon what kind of job you have. But if you want to have a great career, make a big difference, there really aren't many people that are working from 5 days, that are doing it from home.
Thank you for that. And since we are in a particularly sort of uncertain, turbulent time, at least for the generation of students who are in the audience today, what do you think separates leaders who keep people engaged during tough times from those who lose them? What is a good leader of tough times, really, what skills do they have, and how do they distinguish themselves? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. Well, we all lean in with hope and inspiration. That's all emotional. That's a place where chat still will have trouble. Remember, you don't always trust, you and I don't always trust chat either. But it's amazing. It's a time where new leaders will rise up because people need inspiration. And now you can rise up for the wrong reasons and you get some of that. But hope is a really powerful, clarifying sort of I should say that the tough times that we're going through in the workplace and with people fighting for jobs. I just read a statistic that 50% of last year's college graduates can't find a job that uses the degree or has a living wage. But those are very clarifying times for all of us. Mm-hmm. And but I think that we have to have hope, because in the absence of hope, then you have depression and withdrawal and all of those kinds of things. But it's a really important leadership moment that this country is going through.
Well, on that note, I think we end with a hopeful note. Thank you very much for participating in this chat. We really appreciate all of your insights and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.